The Brewtallyspeaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Starving Artist Brewing. Starving Artist Brewing may be a small speck on Michigan's beer map, but they say big things come in small packages. A brewery who really puts their money where their mouth is, supporting underground artists far and wide. Making delicious beers with the simple belief that you should judge beer, not people. Brewtallyspeaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. And now, on to the show.
Say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Brewtallyspeaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Garret from Silent Planet. This was a really, really great conversation. Been very much looking forward to putting this one out. It was interesting because Garret was somebody that I feel like it's funny as a whole that a lot of times there are certain bands where, you know, people will reach out or send me a message or a DM or something and be like, why haven't you had so-and-so on? Or you should get someone from X band. And Garret is someone that a lot of people have said you should have on the show. And the weird thing is they're even doing this for like 8 years now. I got to get used to saying that. But it's a thing where I still sometimes have this thing where I hold somebody or a band in such a high regard because of the fandom and how much the band means to its fans. And so it becomes this thing where sometimes I'm like, can I do something? Can I deliver something that is worthy of that person's time, of the people who will inevitably listen to the episode? And will it be worthwhile? Like, and I know that's such a weird thing to still kind of get hung up on. Like, you know, I'm afraid to talk to this person because maybe I'm just not up to par with the expectations that I'm putting on it, which is a weird thing. And I think a lot of us do that in our own personal lives. I think we put expectations, I think we put limitations, I think is a better way to say it, on ourselves because we're so worried about the perception from other people. And I think a lot of times it hinders us so often from doing and experiencing really awesome things. And so a friend of mine who I talk about right out the gate, Dale, who works at a couple of venues here in town, has also become just a really great friend to my wife and I, and is someone that is friends with Garret, and was a thing where I had kind of was talking with him at a show. I was like, I think I'm going to try to talk to Garret. And he's like, oh man, you should. He's so nice. He's super rad. I think you guys would really hit it off and have a great conversation. And it kind of gave me a little bit more of a sense of like, okay, maybe I should, because this person knows me and this person knows the other person I'm trying to talk to. And if they feel that between the two of us, we'll probably be good to talk to each other and have a meaningful conversation, then I felt more confident in it. And honestly, it's kind of an interesting parallel as I've been thinking about it, because Dale is also somebody that myself and Tyler from a Virtue are all in kind of a group text. Initially kind of started as let's do a weight loss journey thing, competition. And really it just kind of turned into the three of us sort of being focused on losing weight and being healthier. But a lot of it has just really been checking in on each other and kind of being there for each other from more of a mental health kind of state of mind. And honestly, it's been a thing where it's kind of nice where sometimes I think when you're trying to do something and be a better person, you often you'll make excuses, and I'm not going to say that they're not excuses as to why you didn't do the thing you set out to do, but I also think there's an understanding and maybe a compassion that when you're doing it with other people where it's like, yeah, I've had a really bad month, work's been kicking my ass, not really been mentally there, struggling, but I'm just trying to be better, and I'm going to try to do these things. And in that, I feel like it's been really great to kind of have that support system and to kind of have a system in place to check in with each other, especially as guys, where a lot of times we don't have some of these conversations. And honestly, I just actually sent the guys a podcast that a friend of mine, Alfonso from Heartsick, had sent me with Busta Rhymes on the Diary of a CEO podcast that just came out a couple of days ago as I'm recording this. And there was just some real fucking game dropped by Busta in it. And it was just really great to see another celebrity, see another man. And I'm going to say this, and it might come across as weird given that it's coming from me, but it was really great to hear a black entertainer, celebrity, talking about mental health problems, dealing with weight issues, dealing with, a lot of addictions to a degree, but also talking about being successful, talking about the drive it takes to overcome bad mindsets, environments that you come up in. And it was just something where that whole episode really kind of encapsulated, I think, what our group text is about. And was something where I shared it with them, and I was like, I'm sure you're going to find something in this that motivates you. And even today, as of when I'm recording this, I decided that I know I have time coming up at the end of the year with my wife, where we're both off from work, that I am going to be more dedicated and vigilant in turning my life around and getting healthier, going into year 40 and before I hit 40, and basically before everyone kind of starts on the new year, new me bullshit. And I reached out to another person to help me in starting the journey and kind of starting on a better foot than just me doing it with no purpose or no sense of direction. And ultimately, the point of me saying all of this is I've really been kind of thinking about the betterment and being more mindful and intentful with my intentions. That's probably not how I should have said it. I probably should have said it of being more aware of my intentions and being, I guess, more mindful of my intentions is probably how I should have said it from the get-go. But because that's something Garrett and I talk about in this quite a bit. I guess if that was the through line of the episode and the chat is its intentions. So I've been thinking a lot more about it, especially, as I said in my last episode with Jordan and Mitch, talking about finding inspiration, finding your why, finding the things that make you happy and being passionate. And when you do those and you kind of are able to be happy again, find the happiness in the things that make you happy. And it's a thing where I've just kind of been thinking a lot more about, anniversaries and end of the year and all the things that happen at this time of year, and at the close to December and New Year looming and all that kind of stuff. And it's just been a thing where thinking about this conversation with Garrett really has kind of been the catalyst of me starting to shed my own bullshit, I guess, and start being like, I need to be more aware of what I'm doing, the things I'm putting out there, and it really ultimately applies back to me as a person. I need to be more aware of what I'm putting into my body, what I'm expecting, and I listen to too many successful people who cut back on a lot of the shit that isn't healthy for them, and getting better. And honestly, it sounds so stupid to say this, and this is the other reason why sometimes I'll go on for 10 minutes on these intro and outros talking about things I'm going through because maybe they're going to resonate with you. But really listening to that Busta Rhymes chat today and him talking about essentially being on the verge of dying and hitting a weight because of the excessive drinking, the excessive eating, and all that kind of stuff, which I'm not going to say is a problem, but I also know is a contributing factor to where I am today. And that I just, as he said, I needed to make a change and I just had to do it. And there wasn't any kind of dipping your toes in kind of shit. It's just, you gotta fucking go all in. So that is what I'm in the process of doing today. I know before, coincidentally, in my chat with Andrew from Idola, Dan Scavin, we talked a lot about the fitness journey that I was on at the time. I'm a little bit disappointed to say that, I've gained all that weight back, the 32-ish pounds that I had lost. But ultimately, I realized I need to be more mindful of my intentions and be just more direct with what I want to do. And instead of just going, okay, I'm going to start and just kind of pussyfooting around it, I just need to fucking do it, set a date, and make it a part of my everyday habit now. All of that said, let's get into my conversation with Garrett, and I'll talk to you all on the other side of it. To talk to Dave / Lurk from Landgoat yesterday, I saw, or last night.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's awesome.
And then I was going to surprise you, and I was going to have Dale because I live here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So
Big Dale.
I was going to have Dale.
Little Dale 87.
Yeah, Little Dale. Yep, I was going to have him send a video, like question, and be like, "Oh, I took a question from a fan, and then surprise you with it that it was
funny.
Tim."
Dude, I love Dale. He's amazing. He's just like one of the kindest people I've ever met at a show. Specifically, someone working security. He's just really, really awesome, really nice dude, and keeps people safe and loves the community, loves his job. Just exactly what we need more of.
Yeah, it's funny the amount of times I've seen him quote unquote go viral for basically essentially doing his job, which I think is funny, but it seems like it's so out of the norm to see like a security person actually want to be at a show that they're working and then also having a good time while also keeping people safe and all that kind of stuff. So it's it's funny, like, he's, literally like the antithesis of like a gentle giant, where like you see him and you're just like, you're just so nice and so soft spoken, but like you just don't expect it when you see this like giant grizzled man coming at you.
Yeah, no, totally. He definitely breaks the stereotypes of like scary metal guy, and it's just like he's a nice metal guy, and is like a good dude, just great at his job, just makes everyone better. Love that guy. Well, yeah, dude. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I don't typically like necessarily talking about like the record because I feel like it makes it very like, oh, this conversation happened between this time.
Right.
But there's some things that like I do love talking about in the construct of like when we get the press bios with the media links. Like I like those because I don't know that the public ever sees like some of those things contained within the presser. And so sometimes there's like really interesting things within there that I'm like, I think they should include that into other facets of like, if they put like press stuff for the record, like that people can read. Cause then I think it'll give it a stronger sense of like more of the record and so forth. But there was something that kind of stuck out to me when I was reading the presser earlier, when I first got it. And it was honestly that, you're talking about, the album name Superbloom and kind of what it came from and how part of the album came about because like you were working on it, then you had like your accident, and basically that kind of spawned a whole different set of, I don't know if emotions and reactions to everything that you went through to kind of refocus the band into wanting to do something, given the fact that now all of a sudden you're like, well, life is kind of fleeting at times and it can be taken away in a moment. So why not take some risks and do something while you still can? But in the bio, you talk about more paranormal like energy and like things that happen in the world around you. And I have to say, I think I've always kind of been aware of it, but I just don't think I've really tapped into it myself, where I've like things will happen and I'll just kind of be like, nah, that's probably just a thing. But now I'm kind of like, I talk to more people through doing this, and having people kind of being willing to talk more about like the connections to the world around us, whether it be maybe supernatural things or whatever. And so I kind of wanted to get into that a little bit. I mean, we are kind of on the verge of Halloween at this point. So it's like, let's get into some kind of interesting, weird stuff. What, is that something that you've always been tapped into, or did it really take like your accident to kind of really, really hone in on that?
Yeah, I think, I grew up in a kind of religious context, and in that context, there's certain things, certain supernatural phenomenon that you are told is like real and true and stuff. And then there's kind of a whole other list of things like, say, like aliens or ghosts or whatever, and you told, oh, that's not real, though, that's superstition. And just like and I think that over the last couple of years of researching and kind of just figuring out what this album would be, I just kind of learning more about different dimensions of reality, and the idea that that there's I think most folks, my understanding is in quantum physics, believe there's at least like 10 dimensions to reality, and we only can experience like 3 of them. And coming to this belief that there are other realities and other dimensions kind of stacked upon our own. And Superbloom as a record is about a person in 1996 who goes missing in Humboldt County, California, and about what happened to them, and the story of them kind of finding other reality, kind of interacting with other realities and what kind of might be on the other side of those things.
I think what gets kind of interesting sometimes when you talk to people, I think that kind of tap into more of those things. Like I'll kind of share something to kind of maybe explain where I'm coming from, and maybe it'll kind of, when I ask the question, it'll help you. But I'd always kind of known that I'd been around death a lot growing up, between losing my brother when I was like 2 and family and all this kind of stuff. But it wasn't until going to therapy, like during the pandemic, and the therapist would ask me like, well, how did this relationship get resolved? And it's like, oh, that person's dead, had been dead for a long time. And they just were kind of like, you seem so nonchalant about it. And it was just like, well, yeah, death happens. Like it's, I don't know. It's not a big deal. It's something I've always understood that it's going to happen.
Part of life.
And but it took them kind of explaining like, that's how you approach it isn't really a normal way for a lot of people, because a lot of people will kind of push those thoughts out, those ideas of this isn't fine. Like this isn't going to last forever. It is finite. And to kind of do the things that maybe challenge you, scare you, whatever, to get the most out of your life, given the fact that it's the only one you have. And it was kind of the first time I really took stock in that a lot of people actually don't really think about that until it's kind of too late, where it's like it takes something drastic happening where they're like, oh, this is a finite life, and I do need to take control of it and kind of do things instead of just letting it pass me by. And so when you kind of understand that, I feel like it makes a lot of the things that I feel like I've lived through not seem as strange and as weird, because it's like, well, why wouldn't I do this? Why wouldn't I come to these conclusions when I understand that this is the life that we live in? It's the only one we've got. And in listening to the record, and like I said, kind of reading through the presser, I can't, knowing that you kind of were, by all accounts, kind of come from a more religious background, it's like, what does it do to you when you suddenly are kind of faced with your own mortality, maybe haven't thought about it, and what does it inspire you to start doing from that moment forward, where you're kind of rebirth of sorts?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, it's funny you say that about, mortality, and kind of coming to terms with that, because I was very, definitely had a moment, where I was, pretty sure I kind of the moment that every band fears, where like our I could feel our van spinning on the freeway and turning and you know, hearing our driver yell and knowing that we were going to go down, and we were going at a pretty fast speed. So um, you know, I don't think it's obviously you don't have time to like think of everything or something, but definitely had a thought of like a roller coaster, kind of like, here we go, like, you know, I'm not in control, and whatever happens is gonna happen. And definitely, I think coming out on the other side of that as a band gave us kind of like a new determination, and also just, I don't know, just like, yeah, like we almost died doing the thing that we've been doing for like 10 years now. And, you know, when you have that moment, you kind of think, oh, wow, like it just, you really realize like how easy it would have been to die right there. And I specifically, my head was cracked open and I was bleeding a lot. And, you know, so I assumed that that could have, you know, I don't know, just a little bit more force, a little bit faster or something, and that could have been it for me. And I don't I don't think anyone really has the answers about what happens when we die. I mean, even within like religious texts, there aren't like, as much as maybe you might meet some dogmatic religious person, like a say like some say like a traditional Christian who's like, I got all the words, I got the word of God right here, I know exactly what happens when you die. You really don't. Like either the people that were that were writing the Bible weren't really giving a handbook on like how it works. I mean, there's things they say, you know, like to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord or something, but those things are, we don't really know what those mean in a super pragmatic sense, you know, and so I think anyone who's being honest and I think intellectually humble has to admit we don't really know what happens. You can look at what happens to a body, but the energy, the consciousness, like where does that go? You know, and I know there's traditions that believe in, you know, reincarnation, and there's traditions that believe in heaven and hell, and there's obviously a lot of people that just believe that, you know, it just kind of fades to black and that's it, you know, and you're gone forever. And I think wherever you fall on that spectrum, I think that there I would hope that people could have a sense of awe that like that makes it okay to not have the answers, you know. And even this album being about the paranormal occurrences that so often seem to happen in the Northwest California area. The you ultimately kind of just have to decide for yourself. You know, you can find some evidence for, and you can find some evidence against, and you can find some phenomena that's just inexplicable. And I think that's something that more and more people are having to wrestle with right now. And with a lot of the footage that's come out from our own, you know, U.S. Navy footage of pilots like seeing crafts just doing stuff that defies the laws of physics and stuff, right? And people are coming to a place where I think whether it's their religious tradition or if it's just their belief, however, you know, maybe incoherent, that you know, science has the answers to everything right now, like we have solved science or something, which of course we haven't, and we're always learning. But I think a lot of people do, I find, have a belief that like everything's kind of been figured out now, you know, like maybe there's like a tiny fraction that's not, but I think a lot of people seem to have the belief that like our world is pretty well defined at this point, and you know, we've kind of lost the mystery of it. And while I disagree with that, you know, those people too, I think, have to wrestle with what the nature of reality is when they see like some of the footage that's coming out, or hear some of the testimony that's even been before Congress. So I would hope, you know, that people find a sense of awe, or a sense of like, what if, a sense of wonder, a sense of just something that gives them pause on the belief that like they have it all figured out.
Well, I think you're kind of touching on something that as I get older, it's kind of a thing that I think leads me to, I don't want to say like a more enthralling life or anything like that, but just the idea that like I don't subscribe to the idea that it's like everything is like cookie cutter. Here's all the information, all these kind of things. And I feel like as I have had numerous conversations over the decades that I've been alive at this point, and conversations now, like my parents kind of have found religion again, so like getting into conversations about whether I believe or don't with my dad, and coming to the conclusion a lot of times that it's like, I think for a lot of people, and I don't mean this as a slight, I mean this just kind of from my perspective, this is just how I feel about something, but it's a thing where sometimes I feel like we're so conditioned as people to, if you have a question, here's the answer, and it's finite, and it's always going to be this thing.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, there is solace to be found in having a concrete answer, because then you don't have to do any work for yourself. You don't have to think and pay attention to other things and draw your own conclusions. It's already been decided for you. And I feel like as I get older, all I want to do is learn more, especially about myself and the world around me. And this might be a little bit TMI to a degree, but it's a thing for like, it's why as I get older, why I've gotten a little bit more into like psychedelics and stuff, because as Craig from Straight from the Path kind of put a really good tweet out a while ago, but it's exactly why I enjoy doing things like this, where he's like, we are so in control of our lives so often, like we're in the driver's seat. Sometimes you just need to not be in control to let go and understand of the things around you and kind of be uncomfortable. And it's in that uncomfortableness where you start to grow and really learn. And for me, I feel like there's always something for me, and it's kind of why I do it, is to kind of get out of myself and kind of have to, like, if there's been a problem ruminating in my head, that it's like when sometimes you take shrooms or things like that, it's like you can't just stop and get off. It's like you have to address the thing. And the other thing that has been very therapeutic for me is taking the knowledge that I have gained from going to therapy and then also kind of doing this other thing and kind of working my way through my own bullshit. And I just don't think people are willing to. I'm not saying you have to do that to come to the same conclusions, but I do believe that you need to be willing and wanting to grow beyond yourself and around your set of normal circumstances, and just be uncomfortable and learn and be challenged. And I just don't think a lot of people want that.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. I think, I mean, it's like it's difficult to choose discomfort, you know what I mean? And I think that, that's a really good point you make, that, you have to relinquish control. I think a lot of people don't know the difference between like their ego, or I should say like the self that they think they are consciously, and then the self that they actually are, like who you are, because you're not just your own, what's above the water of your consciousness. There's in that, Freudian metaphor of the iceberg, it's like we experience like 10% of ourself, and then there's like 90% of ourself under the water, that we're still we're interacting with often, but I don't know how well we can really know it. I think there's also, I think, the value of community, of course, is that sometimes people in your life can kind of know you in some ways better than you know yourself, I think. But anyways, getting past, the self and those questions, like, is it an illusion or what? I think a lot of people have found help from just various things that help them to lose control of the mind temporarily, to have a kind of a death of a sort, like a kind of an ego death or a temporary ego hold that kind of frees them from. I think consciousness is a gift, but it's also a burden, like when you read like this, you hear about the story of like Adam and Eve in the book of Genesis. It's pretty, it seems to me like when you read it from like if you get outside of the stupid tired old debate of like, did it literally happen or not? Because it's not the point. of a myth, and also myths can often, I think, be more true than things that literally happened, and that's the point of a myth, is to teach us something. And like Eve takes the apple, and then one of the first things that happens is like Adam and Eve realize they're naked and they hide. And to me, it seems pretty clear. They take the apple the fruit. And just, we know it's a fruit from like what is it called? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And immediately they're like aware of themselves. It's like that story almost talks about, like, I feel like it's like the moment people went from like just sort of being ultimately present, like animals are like incredibly present, to crossing over to like the self-awareness. And if you think about like depression, anxiety, a lot of that stuff I think comes from the fact that we like have a constant dialogue going in on our head, and it can be hard to be like where you are now, because we're able to think about the future in some sense, however delusional it might be. We like, and so we live in like all these different places, and it splits us up, and it makes us deeply unhappy. But it's also like this unique thing that kind of sets people apart from most of existence. And I think that the burden of consciousness, like people have found relief with psychedelics, and even in something that everyone can do, and something that I think most people I find who take psychedelics learn from psychedelics, is to meditate. And I think everyone can meditate. I think everyone can benefit from meditating. And to sum it up real quick, meditation is I had a buddy who's a doctor of psychology. He explained it like meditation is like the computer's still running, but you turn off the screen.
Sleep mode.
So it's not like you stop existing, or some people might have some mystical experience where they like go to a completely different place, but I think most people, you know where you are and what you're doing. You're simply just trying to like let go of the wheel for a second and just like sit in the car and just be like, I'm just here, and just be present with it. And it's crazy what can come up when like you just take a second from the constant, okay, I got to do this, then I got to do this, then I got to do this. And because whether it's productive or not, whether the things you're doing is, I got to eat food, I got to play video games, or it's like I got to go to work, or I got to call this person, or oh my gosh, this thing's coming up, and we spend so much time like thinking, creating this illusion that we're in control of reality or something. And in reality, I think it just kind of distorts things, and it makes it hard for us to be like where we need to be right then. So yeah, it's there are some practices, there are some methods I think people can do to find that.
I almost wanted to cut you off because I didn't want to forget it, or depending on where you ended up, I didn't want to like cycle back to something, but you said something, and it's, again, it's kind of one of those things that I feel like when you're paying attention, like information will kind of seemingly come at you, and then you're like, wait, I've never put that together, but these things kind of connect the dots a little bit. So you were kind of saying that like some people, when they believe that there's 10 planes of I forget the phrase you actually said, but like 10 planes of existence, basically
10 dimensions.
10 dimensions, sorry. But then you were just saying that it's commonly thought that we only use 10% of our brain, our actual brain power. And then I was like, that's interesting. Why? What is it about the law of 10? Essentially, well, why is it 10?
Yeah, I do think my understanding, I'm not a neurologist. I do have some background in psychology, but I'm not like I was I was studying to be a therapist. I wasn't like studying brains all day. My understanding is that we using 10% of our brain thing it's kind of a myth. I think that 10% of our brain, we can actively identify like what that part of the brain is doing. But I do think a lot of the what we consider like gray matter that's just kind of there is still very much part of the whole organism of it. It's more or less, it's kind of more of like an indictment on, I think, our lack of understanding still, because the brain is kind of the deep ocean or the deep space of the body, which is to say like we're still, there's still big discoveries being made in the brain. I mean, even like what happens when we sleep, and like what,
Yeah.
like just like the whole sleep thing still, it's funny because sleep is obviously one of the, three fundamental pillars of existence. It's literally you should be spending, about a third of your life doing that. But we don't even still like really understand that, or like, why do people die or go crazy if they don't get sleep? We just know that that's kind of the case. And so it is, yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. Just how, I don't know how much is unknown to us. And I think that's a topic that's been coming up a lot recently with these interviews if people can get anything from this record that we're about to put out next week, I would hope that it would just be a sense of wonder, a sense of of possibility, that all the, or at least most of the stuff that's talked about in the songs and the short stories that kind of surround the songs are just kind of they're things that are based in, on stories that are not my own. It's not, but it's also something that's a lot of what if, and possibility, because as far as science has taken us, and it's pretty far. I mean, we're talking right now, using like invisible waves of information are getting sent between us, and that's pretty amazing. But I still think that, if humans manage to survive on this earth, survive each other, frankly, for another 100 or 200 years, I think we would look at the science that we have right now in the world that we have right now and be like, oh wow, that was novel, but also like we were so behind the curve. Like I think we'll look back and think like, wow, like we really had a long ways to go still. That's my belief. Science is great. It's just not. It's an ongoing process. It's not really like something that should be treated like a dogmatic religion, where it's like, okay, this is final. We've reached all the conclusions, and I think there will be a lot of big discoveries, and I also think that eventually we might even begin to understand some of the energy that's not really, that we can't immediately perceive within our three dimensions, but like some people call it ghosts or angels or demons or aliens, or I think there's a lot of different terms depending on where you come from that have tried to get at just the nature of like energy that is being felt and being experienced, but can't be like immediately like captured or like studied very easily. I think that there will be some discoveries that kind of point to like, wow, there's other energetic, seemingly, intentional things on the other side. And I mean, even like, in the last 10 years, it seems like, simulation theory's gone from like kind of far out idea. I mean, it was in the, obviously people had heard of, the Matrix or what have you.
Right.
But the idea that our existence is a simulation has become, I would dare say, I don't know if you'd agree with me, like a fairly common belief. I mean, you have like Elon Musk, the most wealthy person on Earth, has openly endorsed that belief of existence, and that came a lot from the specific studies, including I think maybe most notably the double slit experiment, where they basically they found that particles were like literally like behaving differently if they were being observed or not. And that I think is the closest that I think maybe anyone's ever come to proof that like we don't live in like a stable closed system reality, that like reality is that like things are dynamic, and while we do have laws that can account for a lot of things in like physics, we don't we don't have an explanation that is going to be sufficient unless if we start saying there's something behind all of this. Like we may not be as autonomous and free or I mean, traditionally free. I think that we make decisions, and we think we make decisions, and we have experience of reality. But I think we're finding that there's stuff that there's like a math behind all of this that like governs the world, and I don't think it can all be explained with what we currently have. And specifically that double slit experiment that I'm talking about really just like shook people to the core, because they're like watching these things and they're like measuring particles and shooting them through like these little like these barricade things, and then they're coming out the other side differently every time we watch it than if we don't watch it. Even if we use a camera, it behaves differently than if there's, and it's so it's so crazy, but it's kind of it's a wild thing where you know, I think for a long time the prevailing belief about everything, or within the kind of secular or atheist community, was like, yeah, you know, like we emerged from like a series of complex gases, and life kind of evolved from that. And you know, now, especially if this alien thing continues to happen, and there's more and more proof of, well, maybe not necessarily aliens, but unidentified, you know, aerial phenomenon,
flying objects.
Flying objects. I think that we'll probably get to a place where people will wonder, like, oh, well, you know, maybe did something else bring us here? Was there life on Mars? You know, was there what? You know, just I think there's going to be a lot of questions that people have, and I think it's an exciting time to be alive. I'm really curious to see what comes of it, and if we can manage to not destroy ourselves in the next 50 years as a species.
You touched on so many things, and it sparks so many like things I want to branch off of. But like, I'll start with this. So you were talking about like meditation, and a lot of people who do or tend to do psychedelics kind of go into meditation at some point. And Porter from Atreyu was one that was really like, we have a lot of conversations sort of like this when we hang out and text and all that kind of stuff. Actually, it's funny. We've been putting off doing a chat because like they were dropping the series of 3 EPs that are then going to become the album. And so we've been waiting for all that to get announced so we can just literally have the conversation without having to stop or not be able to talk about whatever. And so as we're scheduling this the other day, I was like, I have this day off because my wife's out of town. I was like, I was planning on doing an acid trip like this one day, but if you want to do a chat and that works better for you, I'll postpone it. And he goes, no, let's do it the next day. I want to hear about like how this trip works for you and like what does it unlock for you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting though is he was the one that kind of was championing me to do TM because that's something he gets into and does. And for a while, like I felt like when I tried doing it, it just, you know, the whole point of doing it is to kind of find that centering balance in your life, like in the middle of all the chaos every day, is just for this 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever time you are setting aside, it's your time to center yourself and kind of not be bothered by everything else. Totally, and so I feel like when I would try doing it, maybe I was quote unquote trying too hard and thinking something was supposed to happen other than just a new routine. And, you know, I had told him when I went to Atlanta and I was waiting for my wife and a few other friends to get ready for us to go out, that I was like, you know, I'm up on a nice like balcony that's kind of higher up in like the trees and stuff like that. So like, and it's nice. So I'm just going to try it. Like, and I throw on some like just ambient music and just went. But it was a thing where I think I was up there for like maybe 20, 25 minutes before everyone like came to get me. And like, I remember texting Porter when I was done with this experience, and I was like, I think I did the thing everyone talks about what TM does, where I was like, I kind of was able to get out of my body. I went like above myself. I could see like the surrounding like street and the trees. I went down like to a place like it was weird because when we walked that way for the first time, I saw the things that I saw, but I had never seen before. So there's like weird sense of deja vu where it's like, okay, I just saw this like 30 minutes ago, but I've never been here.
That's crazy.
I've not had that. I've not had that experience since. I was not under the influence of anything. I had just woken up and like no coffee, no nothing, and just sat up there. And then this happened, and it hasn't happened since. But he's like, that's kind of like what it can do when you like really lock in on it. And he goes, so for like your fourth or fifth time, like for you to experience it, like it's pretty rad. Like I said, I still haven't had it happen since, but it's something where it's like, I don't know if it was just like the quote unquote stars aligned, because like I'm in a place that makes me feel peaceful and happy. And I was just away from everything, like my normal home routines, that it's like I'm out of a normal routine for myself. So like now I'm able to tap into something. But kind of speaking to that as well, you were talking about energy. And I kind of wanted, you know, because this is something I'm trying to, as I get older, I tend to find that, you know, I want to experience more things, but I also understand that you can't just like dive into the deep end with everything. You kind of have to like do them incrementally to make them become new behaviors and stuff like that. And something, you know, I hear a lot of people talking about is grounding, you know, taking off your shoes, your socks, and kind of being one with the ground and kind of the earth around you. And something I noticed when I was looking for photos for your show specific episode is that you don't wear
a lot of barefoot
shoes or socks. You're barefoot when you perform. And I wondered, and I wanted to ask, is it something where it kind of does the same thing for you? It's like a grounding mechanism of like just feeling everything around you and keeping you more present in the moment.
I started being barefoot most of the time when I was like 16. And I kind of did it through my second 2 years of high school. And then when I got out of high school, I found out that I got a text from people like I was in college at that point, and I got a text from people back at the high school that were like, oh, they passed the Garret rule, and now like you get in trouble if you don't have shoes on. It's a new dress. It became a dress code thing that apparently I brought about that by being barefoot. But I wasn't trying to be like rebellious or anything. I just for me it was as simple as like I felt more comfortable being barefoot. It just like kind of worked. It was easy and whatever. And I didn't really think about like I didn't know about grounding or anything until a few years ago. And it's funny because more recently I've kind of worn shoes more often for a few reasons. One, I broke my back in our van wreck, and being barefoot's definitely not bad for your shoes, but having like bad shoes is. And I used to like just carry around like really thin shoes or like flip-flops if I ever needed them. And now I like, if I'm not barefoot, I need to be in like a good shoe. So I wear kind of these old man shoes more often now, but I still love to be barefoot. And the funny thing is, now that I'm not barefoot all the time, I have to be intentional about grounding. And I can say for sure that grounding is very legit. Grounding is like the whole grounding thing. I can't tell you how many times like I'll just like go step in grass with my bare feet for like 5 or 10 minutes and feel something. And I'm 100% fine with somebody hearing this being like, yeah, that's placebo, you know, effect. I don't, you know, I mean, the funny thing about placebo effect people always forget is like placebo effect is a phenomenon because it works. So even if something might be a placebo, if it's working, maybe just keep doing it anyways. But sure. You know, I do. I mean, yeah, you know, we are a complex electrical system. Our bodies are. And there's a lot, and I think that, yeah, if you touch the earth, whether it's putting your hand on a tree or, you know, your feet on grass or something, I think that it's possible that it is beneficial for the electrical system of the body. But I wasn't really barefoot to make that statement or for that reason. But it's funny you say that, because more recently I've been thinking more intentionally about grounding now that I do wear shoes sometimes. But I used to go whole like months without, I think I went a whole semester in college once without wearing shoes. And I always kind of liked it, but I'll tell you, this is something. Some people get really fucking mad at you if you're barefoot. I know you're thinking, what? It's just bare feet. Bro, I can't tell you how many like, oh my God, some dude, I think he used to be in the story so far. I remember like he tweeted like nothing worse than like barefoot musicians and like, I just can't tell you how, well, actually, I had one dude in a band that we're both familiar with, a heavy music band, say, you're the only barefoot guy that gets a pass. And I've always just, or like even in college one time I saw someone like post on like some community Facebook group, like all these barefoot hippie hipsters, I want to stomp on their toes. And I'm always just like, there's so many times I'm like, holy shit, like, are you good? Like, why are you so mad? It'd be one thing if barefoot people were like shoving their toes in your eyes or something, but like I literally just don't want to wear shoes sometimes, and people get emotional about it. And it's one of those weird things where like I never thought, initially being barefoot that, well, I mean, okay, so the reason I was initially barefoot, I broke both of my feet when I was like 14. I couldn't walk for 2 years from 14 until like 16. Really bad breaks. Like so I crawled and used wheelchairs, and that was a very interesting, humbling thing. But and just taught me a lot about life. When I got better, the doctor's like, "Oh, you got to wear these like medical grade shoes." And then just being like a kid, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do the opposite and just be barefoot." And also just being able to walk again after so long, it just felt nice to be on my bare feet. But all that is to say, I never thought about like health benefits, whatever. And then like when people would get like really like weird or mean about being barefoot, then that like rebellious side of me would come out, and I'd be like, oh, I should be barefoot more often just to like spite this person who like has having an emotional reaction to my feet. So that's that's a strange aside about feet and people giving way more of a shit than you would ever imagine about bare feet.
I want to touch on something because I've the only person I've really kind of ever discussed this with in any sort of capacity is Andrew from Ghost Inside. And it was, obviously after the bus accident they had, but since he had lost his leg and all that, and we had kind of bonded over, at the time his 1 decade project had been out for a little bit, and we were just kind of talking about the idea of instrumental music, how it can kind of take you places and stuff like that, and how you like, there's a song that kind of has like ambulance or like hospital noises and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the thing about me is I grew up with a cleft lip and palate growing up, and it's a thing where I had a ton of oral surgeries and stuff like that to correct, everything. And one of the surgeries that I had to go through as a kid, roughly around the same age as, you said you were like 13, 14. I think I was maybe like 10, maybe 11. But I had to have a bone graft. So they had to take a bone out of my hip and put it into my gum line to straighten it out to do stuff further down the road. That eventually didn't work, as I would find out 10 years later.
What do you mean?
But it was a thing where, so the graft didn't work the way that they had anticipated. And the way that I found out was literally they had numbed my mouth to put in. So they pulled the tooth out to give my mouth the space for all the teeth to align and shift and do all that stuff. I'm talking like 10 years of retainers, palate expanders, braces, like the whole gamut of everything. Wow. Plus, like I said, a bunch of oral surgeries and stuff like that. And then it wasn't until they were literally in where
beat up from all this constant work. Like that must have been so exhausting.
As I become older, it's also where I realized I have a lot of food issues where it's like, because going on those surgeries where it's like the first month afterwards, you're basically on a liquid diet. Then it's semi-soft foods for about a month. And then finally you can get solid foods. But then it's like, well, now you have braces. So you can't eat these things because they'll get stuck in, or it could damage the braces or whatever. So I have a lot of weird food problems and hangups that I'm still kind of working through as an adult. I basically have the diet of a child because of that. But it's also a thing where
it kind of like stopped your natural progression that most people would have had with food.
Yep. Among other things, but it's a thing where it was like, literally, I remember they were like in where the hole was that they had made, like the tooth they removed, and they were going to put the implant in. And that was the other part of getting the bone graft, is there wasn't enough bone density to hold the implant. So they were in there and then realized that even with the bone graft, like from 10 years ago, all the shit that I went through, they were in there like, there's not enough bone for this to latch onto.
Oh my god.
So then it was like, so getting like that information as like a 15, 16-year-old kid, where I'm like, I just went through all of this shit I was made fun of like my whole life for basically no reason. And my parents spent all this money, and it like, I'm of the mind now where I'm just like people are like, your teeth. And I'm like, my teeth were never going to be perfect because of how I like was born. we have a bunch of advancements. I could either get like, veneers or false teeth or what. Like, I'm not that vain. I don't care. But the point of what I was going to say was when they did the bone graft, I remember having to like being in the hospital, and I would have like spasms and stuff in my leg, and like it hurt, and it was like really hard to walk. And I remember the condition of me being able to leave the hospital was that I had to walk to the bathroom and back on my own. And the thing was growing up in Delaware originally, that's where I'm from. We got hit with a really bad storm that was coming, like a snowstorm. Like, if you know anything about the East Coast, it's like if you get hit with anything, the whole state shuts down because they just can't handle it. And so I remember my parents were like,
is it because the states are so close together and the infrastructure is so closely tied, kind of thing?
They just don't get that kind of weather, so they don't have the means to keep up with it. And so it became this thing where my parents were like, we're not trying to force you to do anything, but if you could walk to that bathroom and come back, like, you can sit on the fucking couch all you want when you're home, please, like, if you could, because we don't want to be stuck here. And so I did it. But I remember even getting home, like, it was such a ordeal, have to learn to kind of walk again, like in a different manner. Like, and I'm not like negating, like my legs weren't broken or anything, but it's like the surgery did a thing to where it's like, it was hard for me to walk for a little while. And it's a thing that it's a weird mental thing to feel helpless. Like when you've become so accustomed to being able to walk and just do a thing that you don't even think about doing. And I remember my parents went, I think, to go get lunch or something like that. And I was home on the couch, but they had accidentally taken the remote and taken it to like the bathroom. So I had to crawl to the bathroom to go get this remote so I could change the channel. But it's a thing where it's like, sometimes I think, though, like, that's an experience for me, like, where it's like, I feel like that is something that it taught me at a very young age, that it's like, sometimes, like, you shouldn't take for granted things that we mostly do. Something as simple as walking. Dude, and to me, it's like, you're one of the few people that had, through a completely different set of circumstances, but you're the first person other than Andrew that I've talked to that's like had to kind of relearn how to do something at a pretty not normal part of in your life.
Oh, dude, dude, for sure. Like, walking, I do not take for granted. And I have also learned that, specifically myself, I'm one of those people that has to move around a lot. It took me a long time to realize that, but like, if I just kind of sit inside all day, I really, my mental condition just deteriorates pretty quickly. And I think maybe a lot of people are like that. They don't know it, that like, I think that motion is something that is really critical to emotional health. Actually, earlier on this, on a different podcast, I was talking to someone about how, like, it's cool that we talk about mental health, so much, and the whole concept of like, talk about mental health, destigmatize it and stuff. And I agree, like, that we need to destigmatize, people having problems, and that, for a long time, people didn't know how to talk about having depression. It was just kind of like, what's wrong with you, and I'm glad that that's changed in a lot of ways. However, I do think that sometimes when we talk about mental health, we create this category that it's like we think it's happening completely aside from physical health, because, if you're saying mental health, you're kind of insinuating that you're not talking about just physical health, or that there's a distinction between the two. And I mean, our brains are in our bodies, and I think mental health affects the body is such that it is just kind of health, and I understand why we say it, because it's like, you're having mental health problems. We know, okay, that means that your arm's not broken, that, you might have depression or something else. But I think that sometimes the category mental health gives people this illusion that it's only in your head, or that it's only in your brain, but we're a whole system. And physical, just, your diet and your exercise and that kind of stuff does have a huge impact on your physical health, and vice versa. If you're thinking negative thoughts all the time, and you're just constantly anxious, that can affect your stomach, that can change things. There's so much of a connection there, and to where, actually, I like to always tell people, hey, probiotics, maybe you need them. way more people
Yeah.
need probiotics than think. And I sound like an old man here, but I've my life got a lot better once I started doing things to take care of my gut, and once I kind of learned about how much antibiotics are in our food supply. And I think if Western medicine has one major blind spot, it would probably be with regards to not understanding really the nature of just not really understanding the nature of the gut, the microbiome, and how that all works. But yeah, sorry, as an aside, that is crazy though. We both
No
kind of
worries.
learned to be grateful for what we have, and to not take for granted, the ability to do anything really, because it really can be taken from you very quickly.
Well, I think for me, like a big thing. I'm trying to think of how I want to articulate this. You were just kind of talking about also sort of just kind of understanding like what the energy. I mean, I guess if there's a through line through this chat, it's kind of the energy of things, but kind of understanding how we can kind of be our own detriment of things. Like, for example, like I've always kind of been a very things will happen as they're supposed to happen. Like things just kind of always will work out, or if they don't, it's a learning experience of like, okay, there was, something probably led to this. I got to identify what that was and then try to course correct eventually, so that that outcome doesn't happen. But it's interesting because like my wife and I are so opposite in a lot of things, but I think it's ultimately what makes us work because we balance each other out. And something that is wild to see for her is, like, and this is like the stress of a job, but it's interesting to kind of see it and then kind of hone in more on a bigger scale for like, oh, this is probably what a lot of people go through and how they are. But, like okay, so like tomorrow's Friday, but we're both off. But like typically, let's say like we go out with friends on a Friday after work to go to the bar or whatever, grab dinner, and we'll be having a good time. And then she's like, oh, I'm just not looking forward to this meeting on Wednesday. And I'm like, that's so far away. Like, why are you letting something that probably won't even happen? Because honestly, at her job, like a lot of meetings just fall through like last minute. And I'm like, you're stressing about something that isn't even happening. And it's ruining, like the thing happening in the future is ruining your present. And like, I see so many people do that so often where it's like the anxiety or the fear or the stress or whatever ruins so much of like the happiness they're having currently that it's like you're manifesting your own like depression.
Oh, I think we absolutely do. And it's a shame because it's like, I think most people that are doing that, they're not conscious that they're doing it, and it's kind of hard for them to see how they're doing it because it's like how do you it's hard to see it. Like I had an anxiety disorder for a couple of years, and I had a master's degree in clinical psychology, and I didn't realize that I had an anxiety disorder. That wasn't like in my anxiety was a word in my vocabulary, but it wasn't in my like emotional sort of like introspective. I didn't really think of it like an anxiety disorder. I just kind of thought, whoa, like everything's going wrong in life, and I was just kind of bound up in the anxiety so much that I couldn't even see the anxiety. And it's such a trip how easy it is to just kind of miss the most basic things as they're right in front of you, and that was me definitely.
What was it that allowed you to identify that in yourself?
I mean, I tried to, and this is, it's fine that we're talking about this because I actually have, I've been pretty open about this, but we were on tour in 2019. Supporting North Lane in Europe, and I tried to take my life on tour and ended up in like a Belgium like hospital. And then past that, it was like, okay, then after that, it was after the Belgium like mental hospital thing, then I went to like a clinic in America for like a month where I just was getting kind of like round the clock psychiatric treatment, And that whole process, you just kind of being in a mental hospital, once you get there, you're like, whoa, I really have a problem. And obviously I knew I was suicidal, but I didn't. It took me a while to realize like how I'd gotten to that place. And I'd gotten into just such a fearful sort of all or nothing view of reality that it was, yeah. And then kind of just thinking more back about it, I'm like, oh yeah, like I do avoid sleep like until I'm like exhausted, and just a lot of the hallmarks of anxiety I realized were like in my life. And I definitely wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for my bandmates who kind of intervened and tried to help me when I was on tour. But it was it was a process for sure. It was a process getting to the place that I could, even identify and start to do something about it. So yeah, man, I cannot. But it took me a long time to see it, and I had a master's degree in psychology. So it is just to say, like, it's a lot of times it's easier to see what's going on in someone else's life or see what's going on in the world than it is to like look at yourself and like see what's happening.
It's weird. I didn't know that I didn't know that about you. I don't like I said, you said this is kind of like not maybe common knowledge, but you've talked about it before, but it's not something I've come across or heard about. But it's interesting in doing this show, and kind of honestly, like, kind of the other theme of this is sort of self-help and stuff like that. But it's crazy how this show has changed since going to therapy. Like I can kind of pinpoint the episode I did with Lee from Born of Osiris, talking about his instrumental solo record. And I used to prep for these things. Like I'd write out a ton of questions it was almost like a creative writing experience where it's like, I'd have a really good question, but then I'd go, well, you can't ask that right away. Like you got to get to there. So how do I get there? And then I'd build questions to get there. And then a way out. And then it's like I never allotted for there to be any spontaneity, because it's like, well, I can't get back to the questions I've curated.
Yeah, you had your itinerary could accidentally
my day
become more
sheet
important than the conversation. Yeah.
And so it became this thing where
a lot of life too.
Yeah. And so like that was a really good one. But I mean, just you talking about what you just said, and first of all, thank you for being honest and open about it. It definitely didn't have to be, but it took me right back. My reaction to you saying that took me right back to when I had Andrew from most people know him from Dance Gavin Dance, but Idola, and they were on the Don Broco Periphery tour, Dance Gavin, and we were talking. We're doing a chat in the bottom of the Royal Oak Music Theater, and like we were just talking, and I think it was like in the first, like the episode never came out because it kind of got hit with like you can't put this out for a couple of reasons. But we have since talked about it. He's talked about these things on other platforms and so forth. So I'm not talking out of turn, but it was just wild. Like I was like, "How you been, man?" He goes, "Really? Like, do you really want to know, or like, do you want the sugar-coated answer?" And I was like, "No, I mean, like last time we did this, like you reveal that you have Lyme's disease and you've been dealing with that." And I was like, "So fuck it, let's go, let's get into it." Like, and I wasn't expecting much. And then he's like 2.5 weeks before this, like where I am now, because like we were, I think at the beginning of the tour, he's like, I had tried to take my life, and I was like, fuck.
Wow.
And it's one of those things that like when you hear, like when you're doing this and you're literally listening and talking to someone, people go through things, but it really kind of puts it literally on Front Street. And you can, like, when you can see the person and you're talking to this person and you hear someone say that, you're just like, fuck, I guess I don't, you don't know what other people are going through. And it just kind of is a thing where it's really challenging sometimes. And it's a thing for me where
I hope he's doing better now.
He's doing so much better. He's doing so much better now. And it's a thing where, like I love that, during the pandemic, especially when a lot of people lost the connection to others and not being able to have that community you were talking about earlier, whether it's friends, bandmates, whatever. I had this at least. And with no one being able to go anywhere, like I got to do more of these. And so it was a thing where I was like, I'm so glad that I started doing a weird hobby years before, because it gave me an outlet to not feel stagnated and isolated and alone from people.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
how much you need that. And so it becomes a thing where, for me, I enjoy doing this, and I would assume it's very similar for you for what you do in your side of like this career, where it's like you don't know where these things are going to go, what conversations you're going to have with people, and how you're going to connect with somebody. Like, I didn't know that you had a surgery and broke your legs and stuff like that, and had to essentially kind of relearn to walk like around the same time I had to, age-wise and so forth, and just a lot of the things
that is wild that we have that in common. That's a pretty I think childhood.
Sure, but like, to me, that becomes why this medium is so great, because I think like you and I don't know each other. We know some similar people peripherally, but we're finding out that we're more common than we're not. And I think that if most people would stop like, you know, being so inundated on being on this thing and actually do this more, I think a lot of people
would have conversations. Yeah.
Because I think you'll be able, it's almost a form of therapy, essentially. Like, I know when I don't do this, like there are sometimes where it'll be a stretch of like a week or so, and I'm like, fuck, man, I miss this. Like, it's kind of my form of therapy, where it's like I get to kind of talk through things. I get to learn something new about somebody else and be challenged maybe, or take an idea or thought from a conversation and see how, like, that's how therapy was for me. Like, my therapist would always try to give me homework, and then, you know, and I'll always advocate for this, but BetterHelp was really good for me because it's online and you can just do whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing was that I knew, for me, my therapist was always like, you can email me, you can, you know, quote unquote, text me if you want to get a hold of me. You can schedule another appointment if you need something in the week before. And I was always like, I'm sure that's beneficial for a lot of people. I would rather do our thing, see whatever we discussed. How does it manifest in my life over the course of this week? How can I learn to use the tools you gave me to better improve what I've been going through? And then when we do this thing again, I'm going to talk about that, and then we'll talk about whatever else we do, and then you'll give me new homework, and then I'll kind of do the same thing. But if I had access to you, then I feel like all I would do is just ask you a bunch of questions, and I would just try to get answers, sort of like we were saying earlier, where it's like people just want the absolute truth. Like, here's your homework, here's your definitive answer, and you don't have to think or feel for yourself. And it's like, that's not how I'm wired, and that's not how I want to traverse life.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think people will oftentimes be, you know, be more, you know, be more commonly will like arrive at an unhelpful answer that is actually in the long term going to hurt them, than they will like accept the struggle and the not knowing for long enough to arrive where they need to arrive, myself included, because I think not knowing and being in limbo is like just a very difficult thing for a lot of people, and I think it brings up a lot of anxiety. But I don't think that anxiety of maybe being in limbo is necessarily bad. I just think it's painful and it's difficult. But I think we all, you know, can benefit from kind of being in a middleness and in a middle place. And I guess that kind of goes back to meditation. That I think meditation is, you know, learning how to find a sense of peace in a state of just like being, you know, and not really being on your way to something, or being like, oh, I'm being so productive or constructive with my time, but simply just being and letting that be enough, that you're just kind of in a place of learning and finding, you know, whatever that it might be that you need to find. And but you know, I get that it's easier said than done, and it's very difficult, you know, when you're trying to figure out like what it looks like to you know, find a sense of balance when you don't have answers, because it's just so much easier to push yourself to arrive right away at everything. So, you know, easier said than done, but boy, I know that I would not be able to function at this point with meditation. And a lot of my friends too that have kind of learned the wet wisdom of meditation kind of echo that same thing, that it's like once you really learn the value of it, and you learn how to meditate in a way that's helpful for you, you find that it's essential to like your thriving. And so if, you know, someone's listening to this right now, and we've covered a lot of different topics, but if they have any interest in meditation, I would definitely encourage them to check it out, because it's changed my life for the better. And I would, I'm obviously very biased, but I think that it could really help them too.
Something, this is kind of be one of my last questions, so I don't take up your whole evening, but so this is so something that doing this podcast has taught me, and as you were just kind of saying this, it kind of sparked the idea and the thought. Something in talking to so many different people from all over, but I'm going to really pinpoint it and say foreign people, not from here in the States. As someone who sees people watching and just picks up on a lot of people's mannerisms and so forth, it's been intriguing to watch people, and I'll just say again, foreign people not from here in the States, that when you're talking to them, because English isn't their first language, and that's how we are communicating, it's interesting to watch them when they don't know what they want to say, or the phrase or the word or whatever, that they, instead of talking through and just meandering on with incessant words and things, and it's not even what they really want to say, but they just don't want to appear to be stupid or quiet or whatever, the fear of the quietness of just, I don't know what I'm going to say. It has been so invaluable to me to watch them think and pause and then find the right thing that they want to say. And it's something that I've taken with me ever since, because once I noticed it, I was like, that's so, for a multitude of reasons, like doing a podcast, if all I did was just talk through the whole thing, and then I go, oh, I arrived at what I wanted to say 30 seconds later, trying to cut all that, if I just kept talking and yammering, it's almost impossible to get it to line up and sound like a cohesive thought. But at least if I stop, then it's like, here's the wave thing where it just stops, cut that out, and then sync it together, and then it doesn't appear to be such a long break. Outside of that, though, outside of a practical reason of doing it for this podcast, when you do it in person and when you do it in conversation, it's interesting to see how it almost allows everyone else the permission to do the same. That like the cadence of everything slows down, and you're not talking at a rapid speed. It's like you kind of settle into a rhythm of talking, and it's very, calm and quiet and all that kind of stuff. So I wonder, in all of your traveling and all of the things that you've done in your career, is there something like that you have taken into your to become a daily habit of sorts because of something you've noticed through all your interactions with people?
From a different culture, from a different context.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I that comes to mind is for sure. I see more of an importance of this in Europe, and I think Europe is a place that we've traveled to enough. Like I've had the privilege of going, touring in Japan once, and China twice, and China once, but I think Europe, because we go there once or twice a year. I've noticed that the importance of like hospitality. That like when you get to a venue in Germany, they like feed you, they introduce themselves to you, they talk to you. And in America, it's like you get to a venue and like this, like if usually if a venue employee's talking to you, it's not friendly, and it's not because they want to, it's because they like they have something to say, and it's but I can see a lot of that kind of just cold, like practical, just like get things done faster, more efficiently in my own life too. And being touring, especially in like mainland Europe, especially Germany, Netherlands, Italy, there's like a lot of these countries, I received so much hospitality and so much warmth, and saw Italy really stands out as far as just like a place that really values like a family meal. And so that's probably the first thing that comes to my mind as far as something that I learned from touring in a foreign context that just kind of like helped to expand my mind. I would say was that sense of hospitality that you see in Europe. And I think it, even as you go east, sometimes gets stronger. Like I think in Poland, gosh, some of the conversations I had in Poland, and that's a whole nother thing. I talked to a lot. I met a lot of Ukrainian refugees in Poland as well when we were there earlier this year, and heartbreaking, and also just like so powerful to see, you know, people that don't have a lot of money and they've had to flee their country and they're in another place, you know, pay money to go to a show and like just be present, and you see them singing with people and they're like joining arms, and you're just like, wow, like
you're their escape though
it's
from
a
all
very
that.
humbling, very beautiful thing to see, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that, I don't know, something like, I at times, I don't feel like this is a creative endeavor technically, and I also don't think that
You don't think it's creative?
Okay, so like,
It seems
this
pretty
has been
creative to me.
I guess, like, and this has been something, because like I suffer from, and I think a lot of people do, and it seems like now it's like the new hot thing to be like, I suffer from this. But
Right.
legit, I do know that it's a thing, but like imposter syndrome a lot.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing is like, I remember when Porter and I did like a 6 hour, it was only supposed to be like 2, but we ended up chatting for like 6 hours total on his Twitch thing. And I remember, you know, we were talking about, you know, I was like, you know, you used to say, and, you know, I'm bad at taking compliments because I'll quickly deflect them and whatever. But I was like, you know, you always say like, you're good at talking to people. You're good at making people feel comfortable. You're these things. And I would go, I'm just fucking talking to someone. Anyone can talk to anybody. Like, it's not a skill. It's not a thing. Like, I just feel like honestly, anyone can do this.
Anyone
like,
can make music. Anyone can paint. It's how you do it.
Sure.
I think, right?
Sure.
Sorry,
and that's the thing that no, you're good. And I think that's the thing that I'm starting to understand, is that some people are a little bit more innately, I don't want to say better, because like, and I'm saying better from the perspective of doing this. Some people are just better at communicating, I guess. And really where I kind of learned that was when I had my previous job running, you know, a lids, you know, a sports apparel store and hat store. And someone wanted to train with me specifically because they're like, oh, you're able just to talk to everybody. And I go, and they're like, so I want to watch you and shadow you and see like how you do stuff. And it was a thing where like this person was like 19, maybe 20. So it's like, I almost got 20 years on them. I'm like, you can watch me talk to people all you want, but you aren't me. You don't have the 20 years of watching NBA, like the 30 years of watching the NBA or NFL or places I've traveled or all these things I've done. Yeah. You don't have those experiences to pull from. So like watching me talk to someone, you can't mimic that because it's not authentically you. And that was where I really started understanding like Porter's sentiment of, and other people's sentiments of, you know, it is a little bit of a gift because you have to earn those experiences. You have to earn those things that make you you. But it's a thing where I feel like the hard part at times is when I do stuff like this, like, and I feel like it's the same, like, because like I was telling Dale earlier, actually, I was like, I'm actually really nervous to talk to you because I feel like you're someone that I feel like is very articulate, very well spoken, has a lot of deep thinking concepts and things that you will explore and expound upon and want to discuss. So it makes it harder to kind of be like, okay, like, can I keep up with you? Secondly, I know your fan base is one that's like so rabid for what you do. Anything you guys do, I see that like people like will just go to it. And that's awesome, but it's really daunting for someone like me who it's like, I'm not going to ask you a ton of questions. Like, what is this lyric about? What is this thing? And sometimes I feel like the fan base at times will be like, man, you didn't fucking ask about insert whatever here. And like, that'll be the comment I get on like a YouTube version of this. And I'm like, oh, man. And it's hard not to take it so personally, because I feel like then it's a waste. It was a waste of the person's time, maybe like your time, where I'm like, I let down one of your fans because I didn't ask something that they wanted to hear from you. And it becomes this like weird burden, but it also has kind of allowed me to look at things from your guys' perspective, where it's like, it should never be for anyone but you. It has to come from within, and it has to be, you know, the rediscovery of the why. Why do you do this? What is the purpose that drives you? And if it's for other people, then
Mm.
those aren't pure motivations. Like, it should always be you as the motivating factor as to why you do something.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I think the factor is always kind of changing for me. A lot of times it's our community. A lot of times it's wanting to try something. Well, a lot of times it's just like it can just be as simple as like I'm just like, whoa, I feel stuck in life. Like I just need to like make something. It's funny how it changes. You said you watched football and basketball for 30 years. Who are your teams?
So, as an avid sports person, with football, the only real football team I'm like diehard loyal to is Michigan football. In the NFL, I just like football. Like, it's living here in Michigan, it's easier to follow the Lions. I've been watching the Lions for a very long time. But growing up out east,
Yeah.
I used to watch the Eagles. The Redskins were my mom's, or the Commanders now, were my mom's team. So like I used to watch them. I was real big into the Cowboys in the 90s, like when they had Dion and Emmett and Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin and like all these dudes.
Crazy days. Okay.
And so I just like watching football. Same with basketball. Like my two favorite players growing up were Dennis Rodman and Dikembe Mutombo.
Nice. So you like defenders, rebounders?
I like weird people. I tend to notice that I like weird players. Like when working at the sports store, it's like I would like talking about different jerseys, like throwback jerseys and stuff. Like I was like, I'm very specific to an era, to a style of player. And it's like, for a while I've been looking for, and not like those shitty champion jerseys that we used to have.
Yeah.
Cause like I was telling people, like, cause some people, like, we had a Michael Jordan jersey, a Bulls one, and it's like $325, but it's like game authentic, like stitched and everything. And then all the other ones are like the Nike Vapor jerseys, where it's like kind of a screen print on it, but it's a lot better quality. And I was like, you can bitch about how much the Michael Jordan jersey costs. It's never going to depreciate in value unless you just fuck it up. But like the other thing is, I was like, at least like the quality has like the middle ground has gotten better, because before it was the champion ones where you wash them once or twice and they start fading, or the $325 jerseys. So it's like there was no comparable thing that lasted a while. But I was making the comment to someone, I was like, I wanted Gary Payton Sonics jersey, but like the original Sonics jersey, not like the one from the 96 like championship team, like the old school ones. I was talking about how I wanted a Denver Nuggets, like after they switched from like the bright colorful ones from like the late 80s, like when they moved to Denver, to like early 90s, like 92 era, but I wanted like a LaFonso Ellis Denver Nuggets. And everyone's like, LaFonso Ellis, and I'm like, I don't know, I just love that dude, like, and Dikembe. But it's just like I have weird, very specific players and teams. Like, when I think of the Golden State Warriors, it's like, okay, do I want a Tim Hardaway? Do I want a Latrell Sprewell? Or would I rather have a Latrell Sprewell Knicks jersey? Or would I rather, like, I'll go that, but then it's like when I get to the Knicks, I'm like, well, I think I'd rather have a Marcus Camby, because like I fucking love Marcus Camby on that Knicks team. Like, he was so good.
Yeah, he was.
So like, it's like I'm that kind of person where it's like I've watched enough sports, I know the players, I know where they come from in the different eras and stuff like that. But I always gravitate toward just enjoying sports. Like,
that's cool.
It's the trip now. I was telling someone about this the other day when we were talking about basketball, because the new season just started last night as of when we're talking. And I feel so blessed. Like, it makes me feel old, but like I'm on almost my 5th generation of NBA players at this point.
Wow.
Because like when I started watching in the early 90s, it's like you still had like 89, 90 is kind of when I started getting into it peripherally. And it's like, okay, you still had kind of like your Magics, your Kareems, your Byron Scotts, like some of the carryovers from like those old Lakers, Celtics teams. And then obviously most of Michael, then Kobe,
Kobe era, LeBron era,
Kobe, then LeBron. Now we're into like
LeBron era is confusing because LeBron's he spanned at least 2 eras.
Like 3,
he's going
almost
like
3 now.
Era now. Yeah.
And then it's like, right now with Wembanyama or however you say his last name, like that's probably going to be the dude that I'll probably be watching for the next 10, 20 years.
If he stays healthy and keeps developing, he'll definitely be the defining player of the era, because he's an alien.
That's like, my wife doesn't understand like how sweet some of this shit is. Like like during the pandemic, after getting vaccinated and all that, so we could at least keep traveling. we went and saw a Spurs game against the Bulls. So I got to see Coach Pop coach a home game.
Nice.
That was pretty sweet.
Nice.
We
And
went to New Orleans.
Yeah, I watched the Bulls a couple years. I watched the Bulls in 2020, early 2021 or 2022, I think.
Okay.
That's
in Chicago?
To watch. Yeah, I was in Chicago. Yeah, Chicago, Portland. They killed Portland, but Dame wasn't playing, so it was kind of a moot point that game.
Yeah, I've been blessed because like we got to see them. Then we went to New Orleans, and I got to see one of Zion's first games, like after he like had that injury, and it was against Memphis, so it was like him and Ja Morant.
Oh, Zion
so
and Ja! Wow, that's cool.
And then like my wife's like, I don't know who any of these people are. I'm like, it doesn't matter. This is so sick though.
I went to one of the Lakers Grizzlies playoff games last year, and that was a really good time.
Is that your first playoff game you've been to?
I think it might have been. Yeah, I think it might have been. Yeah, the atmosphere, because I've seen a few regular ones, and the atmosphere definitely is way crazier. Especially, I think, with LA, because I think LA fans are known to be kind of casual about the regular season, but once it's playoff time, they get pretty wild.
Well, that was the crazy thing for me. Like a friend of mine was going down to go to a friend's like internet podcast thing, TV show. It's like really nice production and all that kind of stuff. And I love Atlanta, so I always make an excuse to go. But I saw the Hawks were playing the Knicks, and I was like, "I'll buy tickets. Can we please go?" And he goes,
"The playoff series that the Hawks kind of surprised everyone." Yeah.
Yep, it was so sick.
That was a crazy series.
Yeah, it was incredible. But like, and that was the thing. I had like I've been to a couple of basketball games over the years, but like I've never been to a playoff game, and I was like, this is so sick. Like it is totally different of a vibe.
Yeah. That's sick.
I don't know. I love sports. Like, wife and I are trying to go to a Vegas game because that state, like we got married in Vegas, so we always try to go to Vegas around our anniversary, which is Christmas.
That's awesome.
But we saw it getting built, and we're like, that's so sick. We got to go to a game. And then obviously it got built, and we were looking at going, and tickets for like nosebleeds are like $500 plus. And you're like,
what?
Yeah, they are ridiculously expensive. So it's kind of hard where you're like, it's already expensive for the flights and stuff like that to get out there and go do Vegas-y stuff. But to then spend almost $1,000 just on tickets to go, you're like, ugh. So I'm hoping maybe like if they have another subpar season this year, that maybe next year it'll be like a little bit more affordable. Plus for me, I can then finally wear my my Charles Woodson Raiders jersey.
That would be sick. Dude, well, I thank you very much. Thank you, John. Thank you for having me. This has been
thanks for coming on. Where can everyone find you or anything you would like to plug?
Yeah. Well, we got a record coming out on November 3rd called Superbloom. And we're really proud of it. We're really excited to show it to the world. And yeah, I mean, honestly, that's about it, you know? Be kind.
What song are you most excited for everyone to hear? That hasn't come out.
The title track. Yeah, it's the final song of the album, and it's my favorite thing we've ever done. You know, it's like it's a lot. It's a song that kind of like starts in one place and then it turns into something else, and then at the end it turns into something else, and it's a very dynamic song. And I think those are, not all of our songs do that where they go from A to B to C to D or whatever, but the song did that, and it's very, very proud of it. Very happy with how it turned out. It's definitely something that means a lot to us.
Well, enjoy the rest of your evening for people to hear the record, and hopefully, I would assume, obviously, with the new record, you'll be touring a bunch. Maybe not so much in the winter.
Yeah, we'll be headlining January, February, the North America Superbloom tour, and then we'll be going over to Europe to support a band that is awesome. Both those things should be announced soon. So yeah.
Maybe I'll have to tag along with Dale because I would assume a headlining run is going to be A markets preferably, and Grand Rapids is not one of those, unfortunately.
You know, it's funny. I don't know if we're playing Detroit or Grand Rapids, but I did actually tell our agent that I'm like, I think that I think I kind of enjoy Grand Rapids shows more than Detroit ones, to be honest with you. So
it's a very weird dynamic in the fact that for the most part, Detroit people don't come down here or over here or whatever. And
Grand Rapids people are used to traveling, right?
Yeah. It's always a funny joke too, because my wife and I a lot of times will go to Fort Wayne to go hang out with guys like that are on tour, and everyone will be like, "Why do you and your wife go to Fort Wayne?" And I go, "A, it's the same distance from Fort Wayne as it is to Detroit for us. Secondly, it costs way less to stay there. Third, if you're actually there to hang out with like the people that are on the tour, like, you know, if I know somebody, it's like I get to hang. I actually get to hang out more because there's no one knows anyone in Fort Wayne, unfortunately for them. But I would go now. The downfall of that is the other people that will always trump getting to hang out is Sweetwater, and I totally understand that.
True. That's true. Sweetwater being there, that is kind of like what musicians think of when they think of Fort Wayne. But yeah, hey, thank you for having me, and I hope to see you soon in Michigan or Indiana, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
thanks, John.
Yeah, so that was my conversation with Garret of Silent Planet. I want to thank him once again for taking the time, the willingness to delve so deep into personal things, and honestly, the part, you know, where he talks about having to have gone into a mental health facility and, you know, all the things that stem from that. It still is, and it was really hard to hear, you know, someone going through that. It kind of creates this awkwardness of like, what do you say? Anything kind of feels, you know, even if you're trying to be empathetic, it just feels like it's not enough. And I think for me, the thing was too, is hearing Garret and, you know, for those that maybe are watching the YouTube version, or if you go back and watch the video, when he was talking about that, it took me right back to when a friend basically had the exact same thing happen to him, and sort of just this feeling of helplessness on my part, because I honestly don't want anyone to ever feel that way. You know, I talk a lot about therapy and what it's done for me, and granted, I haven't been going for years and years and years. I only went for about a 5-6 month period, but I always talk and I always want to mention how invaluable that experience is, and how I think it gives you the keys to work through things in your life, whether it be personal, work-related, whatever it is. I always strongly encourage people to give it a shot if you're having problems, because it's just so invaluable. And talking to other people who have figured out how to utilize those tools and go get help and then help themselves out of these dark parts of their lives, these dark corners of their mind and so forth. And it's a thing for me where I feel like, because I've lost somebody to that I don't want anyone to feel that way. I don't want anyone to be on my side of things where you wonder what could have been, how things could have been. And without being like a super bummer about this, you know, it's kind of fitting at times how sometimes, like I say all the time, these podcast episodes are almost like therapy for me, and how sometimes I'm not aware of things necessarily, but subconsciously my mind knows that something is happening, and then it'll take, you know, a conversation or something, or a memory or something seen somewhere, and it'll remind me of, you know, some of my friends and so forth, and some of these experiences that I've gone through. And as I'm sitting here today, you know, it's the first snowfall, you know, winter's coming up and stuff like that. And they just finished working on a building where the friend of mine that had passed away, it's where he was checked into and then left. They're redoing it to be, coincidentally, a like mortgage place. Like, it's a realtor. It's like their main headquarters here in town. And it's also snowing, and it's also getting really, you know, the beginning of winter is about to hit, and this is when he went missing. And it's just one of those things where there's so many memories and so many things, and the feelings of Could I have done more? Could I have been a better friend? The doubt, the insecurities, the second guessing, all the things. And I guess it also doesn't help that this is also around the time, Black Friday just happened. It's when I lost my brother. And it's a time of reflection for me, of just to be appreciative of being here, because there's so many instances in my life where people aren't. And I know that it's a struggle for a lot of people around this time of year. It gets dark earlier. Seasonal depression's a thing, and just, you never know what people are going through. And honestly, you never know. And you don't want to be a burden to other people as well. And so conversations like this, and the willingness for Garrett to kind of open up and explore some of these harder to talk about subjects really means a lot to me, because I do really think it is an important thing to talk about for a multitude of reasons. Beyond that, I really kind of enjoyed getting a little spacey with Garrett on, kind of like things like grounding and things like that, and being more, again, mindful in the intent that you're putting out there, and being purposeful in your intents. And it's just a thing where I really fucking enjoyed this conversation. And I'm so glad that I got out of myself, out of my own head, and finally had this conversation that I feel like was a long time coming. But as I say all the time, I think these things happen when they're supposed to. And I don't think this conversation would have been as good a few years ago. I don't think I would have been in the right headspace to have such a serious conversation, to have gone through the things that I've gone through, and be able to articulate and carry on a conversation that kind of gets as heavy as this one does. Ultimately, I really enjoyed this chat, and I really hope you do too. As I said in the intro, I've really been looking forward to getting this one out, and I really hope that there's something in this that maybe you learned about Garrett, maybe you learned about myself, maybe it makes you think about a new way to approach your own life, in whatever capacity that may look like. Just, I think growth as people, as an individual, I think is always important. I will always advocate for it in whatever capacity that looks like. I think we just need to be and strive to be better people to each other and for ourselves. So all that said, let's start wrapping up this episode. If you would like to keep up with Silent Planet, you can. There is a link tree. It's all in the show notes. Basically, you can just go to linktree /silentplanetsound. That'll take you to their merch store, their touring page, all the various DSPs. But if, kind of quickly roll through the social media, if you like keep up with Silent Planet on Facebook, it's facebook.com/silentplanetmusic. Instagram is Silent Planet Band, and Twitter is Silent Planet. That's SLNTPLNT. And if you would like to keep up with Garrett, it's Silent Garrett on both Twitter and Instagram. Again, very much looking forward to seeing these guys live when they come back around, eating some delicious food that Dale will inevitably have made, because that's what he does. He is a gentle giant and a very caring person, and he always goes above and beyond for all the bands that come through here in town, always makes food and does all the things. Chances are you have probably seen viral clips of the security guard getting down and singing to some of the bands that come through here. You may not be aware that they're from here, but definitely know that you probably have seen this gentleman in countless videos if you follow any bands or venues or anything of that sort. I think even when we were young, Festival ended up sharing a video of Dale when, what is it, Ohio Whisper Lovers, what is that band? Hawthorne Heights, when they were here in town, kind of getting down and they were singing, I think, Ohio Whisper Lovers. So... great dude. Can't wait to hang out with him and possibly Garrett next time they come into town. And for the podcast, if you would like to keep up with us, you can follow us at BrewSpeakPod on all the major social media platforms. If you'd like to email me, you can do such at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com. Keep the conversation going. It's been great getting to connect with a lot of you in DMs, emails, and so forth. So keep those coming. Greatly appreciated. If you would like to keep up with our sponsors, speaking of greatly appreciated, go support them if you can. Go to rockabilly.com, use our code BREWtally at checkout, take 10% off your total purchase order. It is the holiday season. Pick up something great for yourself. Tell your loved ones that there's something that you'd like over there. Pick up something for somebody else, but use the code, save some money, and support a great company for supporting us over here doing this show and spreading great messages. Hopefully you feel that way. And also, speaking of great messages, Starving Artist Brewery, who reminds you to judge beer and not people. Great things coming out of them. Very much, as I've been saying, very much looking forward to enjoying some of the new beers that they are working on and getting the better weather so I can make a trek up there and go to the beach and go have some delicious craft beers and so forth. And just honestly hang out with a lot of cool people. My wife and I went last time. It's the first time we had gone, and I just love the vibe. It feels like sitting in someone's porch, basically, and just having great beer and talking with a bunch of strangers that quickly become new friends. So go check them out, see what they got on tap. If you're in the Michigan area, go check them out. And for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will talk to you all next week, where my guest is Tyler and Lee from Hollowfront. That was an interesting conversation with those two. Lots of inside jokes and ribbing going on. Looking forward to getting that one out to you, and I'll see you all then. Enjoy your week. I'll talk to you all then.